My life goes on in an endless song. Above the earth's lamentation, I hear the real, though far off hymn. That hails a new creation through all the turmoil and the strife. I hear its music ring. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing?
Hello. Wendell Dust Can't Hear. Welcome to Music as a Metaphor on June 4th, 2024. And it has been another doozy, folks. What a week. It's great to show up here on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern on freeworld.fm to talk all things music. And for me, it's interesting personally to sort of have it as a landmark, to recognize when I sit down and I think about everything that happens from week to week to week. It's been really giving a nice perspective for me on things happening, because especially these days, it feels like we go from one thing to another, to another, to another, to another. It feels like a year happens in a week sometimes, and that's what this particular week felt like for me. So glad to be here. It is by the grace of God, I am sure that I am here. And this week, we're going to pick up on where we left off last week on my production, a new song, Like a Boomerang. And it's not been released yet, folks, so don't go looking for it anywhere. It's not out just yet. But I wanted to share it in video form because I felt led by the Spirit that it was the right time. I wanted to match it with some images and music for my own healing and the healing of the collective. So I did that a few weeks back, and then it became clear last week after my adventures, as I mentioned last week, in healing my past. It became clear that that was the right song to focus on. So we'll talk a little bit more about that song and the production of it and what all it goes into the idea of letting go of your past, right? And then I'd also like to switch gears and go back to the topic of advice for parents, because I spent a lot of time this last week at some recitals. And so I'd love to get into a little bit more about things that came up about, music education and advice for parents 101 part C, as I spent so much time this last week watching students perform, getting to see students, and have lots of stories about that. So this is Music as a Metaphor, and once again, Wendell Dust Can't, how can I keep from singing? All right, so as I mentioned, there was a lot going on this week, and it was a continuation of a theme where I've been working on letting go of things from the past. Memorial Day weekend brought that up, even though I don't want to disrespect any veteran by turning Memorial Day into just being any memory, right? Certainly don't want to disrespect any veteran at all, as I certainly recognize the absolute integrity of heart that so many of our soldiers have, past, present, and probably into the future. But one of the things that's maybe different about my perspective on life is, from a larger perspective, I don't think that we're just in a physical war. I don't think that it's only soldiers that are enlisted in our current military that are the soldiers. For me, it's very real that we are in and have been for our entire lifetimes in a spiritual war. And that if we choose, that we can step up and be soldiers of Christ. And in that way, Memorial Day can be seen from a higher perspective, I guess more of a extra dimensional perspective. So that's where I'm coming from with using it for myself to sort of rifle through and how it sort of makes sense. I like to use, the world and the symbolism in the world to trigger my own personal healings, macro to micro. But I just wanted to mention that because I'd said that last week without really mentioning any like actual veterans. And I know, have met some, I know there's many here on Free Will as well that absolutely are the best of the human beings. And, like many of us, they didn't always know what they were fighting for. But does that matter if their heart was coming from the right place? And truly, America has afforded a certain level of freedom that's been incredible as far as a nation is concerned, and that can become a very slippery slope that I don't want to get into today, out of my pay grade. But I do just want to respect all the veterans out there that might be listening and say thank you for your service, because I do recognize that even though our freedoms seem to have been eroding, many, many men fought very hard for our freedoms, and Memorial Day is really, truly for them. So from my perspective, it just happens to be the right time to be letting go of a lot of things. And like I mentioned, it's because I do feel a lot of new things coming in for me, and it's important on an energetic level to let go of things that we might be holding on to. It's always this continual process, right, of becoming aware of our own sin patterns that are still enslaving us. That's the great work, right? Using our life circumstances to trigger us into deeper healing so that we are not slaves, that we truly are liberating ourselves and becoming free agents to actually serve the kingdom, right? It's about being focused on a kingdom where people are not suffering, where people are living in love and joy. And that's been one of the hardest parts about this last week, is unprecedented number of people in my life that are facing just absolute suffering and challenges. And what am I meant to do about that? I will say that I come from a past where my heart, the compassion has been there. I've always felt others around me. I've always felt their pain, and I've always felt like it was wrong. Like it's not the way it has to be. But where I didn't understand is that in my own arrogance and in my own rebellion, I was trying to solve the problems for people. I was taking on responsibility for their suffering, and I didn't even understand the situation we were in. So that was clearly not my place to do that. And so that's what was coming up in these last few weeks, is my old reactions of wanting to fix it for people or take on the responsibility for people or just do something, and not being able to live in a sense of peace, like without that, right? With the people that I love not being okay. But the truth was, after the many, many years that I have been alive at this point, it's clear that many of the times I thought I was helping people, I was absolutely not helping them. And these can engender many dysfunctional relationships. And when you wake up to this and recognize that you have actually, not only have you been powerless to actually help people, like truly help them, you've been unable to actually truly help them. But on top of that, you've possibly done damage to them. You've possibly further enslaved them in a mindset and programming and a system that really isn't good for any of us, right? You've sort of been part of a beast system that you didn't recognize you were being part of. And on top of that, you were in rebellion to what God's will was for you and for that purpose. And then in many ways, you've sabotaged yourself from blessings that you had coming. And a lot of this can be connected with guilt. Okay. A lot of this really can go down to guilt, which is one of the hardest emotions to get in touch with and to feel. It is the most painful, in my opinion, and it is at the base of so many things. So, hello. Hope you weren't looking for a lighthearted show today because we'll get into a bit more lighthearted topics, but we got to hit this first because I don't think I'm the only one who's dealing with this. I cannot tell you the number and the variety of different things that I came across that I just happened to hear about, right? There's so much that people go through that we don't even know that they're going through. And this came up a few weeks ago when I was on Don Jeffrey's show. And I spoke about that here, and I protest Don Jeffrey's, highly recommend his show here on Free World and other places you'll find him. His is more than just this topic, but he happened to have a show where he invited people on to talk about how financially they had been affected by COVID. And it went a whole nother direction. Like, I could not believe some of the things that people are dealing with, good-hearted, kind people. And then that's only continued to expand because these people just happen to come on there and share. But how often do you see somebody and you have no idea what they're actually dealing with? And in my own personal life, oh my gosh, the last few weeks, I have come face to face with, I had been thinking one thing about friends, and in reality, they were in a completely different place, and they're not complaining. They're not asking for anything at all. But the amount of struggle and the pain that they have been going through is so difficult, and it makes me speechless at times. I'll be honest with you. It truly makes me speechless because I just don't think that people deserve this, But that being said, because of the growth that I'm coming through, I recognize that it's not my place to fix it either. That the absolute most that I can do from my limited, lowly soldier position in the kingdom is to be obedient to what Christ can do through me, and to have the bigger thing is to have the prayers and the faith that he can reach them directly, and that they will be willing to reach up directly, right? That in many cases, I can't believe some of the Christianese that I have now come full circle to saying myself. As if you've listened to some of my previous shows, you know that I was a very reluctant Christian for a very long time. I have a past that I am not proud of, and am continually having to come to terms with and feel and see the ugliness of things that I was so arrogantly sure of, that I have now recognized I was not. And helping people was part of that. I wanted so much. That's not wrong to want to help people. I recognize that. I always had a heart to want to serve and help people. Where I got off was not being obedient to what God was asking me to do versus my own assertion of the system, of the situation, and my own stepping in. And this includes, first and foremost, my family, who I absolutely love and adore. But I have had to, reconcile many things in the last 4 years in particular about what I know and what I don't know, and my own rebellion and my own arrogance about, the ability to truly rest in God and trust in him. And when I am truly trusting in him versus taking things into my own hands. And, unfortunately, I've had to have a lot of repentance, and that's also the Christianese. That, you see those guys out on the street saying, repent, Christ is coming soon. And it's like on these movies, and I saw it all the time, and I'm absolutely need to be careful here that I'm not mocking, because I also have been a mocker. I've been a scoffer, and I don't want to do anything anymore, because the point that we're in with the spiritual warfare, yes, I do think it's important to search your own heart and, turn away from things that are keeping you from God's presence. And if that means going around trying to save the world and save everyone else, you got to look at that. And you got to see, is God asking you to do that, or is that you doing that? And if that is you doing that, I hate to tell you something, you're not helping. Okay. And that's putting it mildly. You might actually be making a lot of things worse. Okay. And you're going to have to face that. So I'm going to go ahead and play this song, Like a Boomerang. I played it last week, but I'm going to go ahead and play it again because I'm really wanting to clear the air for myself and for other people right now. And I truly believe music can do this, especially and maybe only if that's the intention that's gone in. And the intention for this song was very much about healing family bloodlines. Like a boomerang, I'm going to play it for you, and then afterwards we'll talk in depth about it. I want to remind you about active listening because I think it's an important reminder, and I am an annoying music teacher. This is what I'm paid to do, is to continually bring up the things that we all know we should be doing, but they're easier said than done. And so having somebody being annoyingly repetitive with it is part about, I'm doing this. Well, am I once again just trying to help people and it's coming from my own place? I'm not sure. I actually don't think so. So I'm going to say it again. When you're listening to this, it's about 4 minutes and 17 seconds. That's 4 minutes and 17 seconds to practice active listening. You're listening to, sort of take every thought captive. So you're listening to the music, and it doesn't matter if you like the music or not. You can get to a place where you're outside of the judgment. You can let those judgments even be there, right? But this is a place beyond it where you're listening from. You want to be embodied. So how does it make your body feel? How does your body feel? Are you sitting? Are you laying down? Become very aware of your body, because this isn't about floating off into a fantasy mental place. That's more of an astral. Like, we want you to be embodied. So you're feeling your pulse, you're paying attention to your breath, right? All these kinds of things to make yourself in your body. Anytime your mind floats off, you just easily bring it back to the music, because the music is your focus for this moment. And then for those of you that are a bit more music minded, go ahead and try to listen to the instrumentation. You can go ahead and let the analytical brain get busy, analyzing and doing things. And this is maybe one of the ways that I've learned in particular to connect the right and the left hemisphere of your brain, is to go ahead and let that left brain get busy with something. And then your right brain can be a little bit more free. The imagination can sort of be there in a presence that doesn't need to, float off into this or that. It can sort of be more of an awareness. And that's what you're looking for. Okay, or that's what you're hoping to experience in this 4 minutes and 17 seconds of Like a Boomerang, an original song by Lyndall Duskian.
Like a boomerang, I'm home again. The trajectory was always gonna be a return to this. A single kiss from a godly man opened up my heart and let me feel the love to go home again. And I'll redeem my line, and I'll redeem my kind, and boom, I'll rang back to life. Like a boomerang, I'm home again, and I don't wanna share all the pain and blame, how we got it so wrong. Caring more about fitting in the world than loving well. We were caught and bound, trapped by the world. And I'll redeem my line, and I'll redeem my kind, and boom, I'll run We can make a room for love to grow. We can heal the years of hidden love. We can heal our family life. Like a boomerang, I'm home again, clearing out the junk, the trauma and the lies buried by the years. And I'll ask again, what is it for? We were so lost then, perhaps we still are, but no longer alone. And I'll redeem my land, and I'll redeem my kind, and boom, I'll right back to life. I'll redeem my line, and I'll redeem my kind, and I'll boom, I'll right back to life.
But here we go. Like a boomerang, let's talk about it. This song was a song that I wrote because I really did spend about 20 years away from my family, away from my hometown, traveling, getting to do my own thing. And it felt really like such a wonderful privilege to get to do that as a woman. I know I'm not going to get all into feminist stuff because I think it's been so co-opted and twisted, but compared to like 100 years ago, the freedoms that I afforded as a woman to just get out and just be able to focus on my own creativity and developing my own passions and contributing to society in a way that I felt really good about, getting to travel, getting to spend time really, really more than anything. It was about my journey with the divine, right? Like me knowing that I wanted to heal myself and come closer to God. And I got to do that. And it was fantastic. And I needed to be away from everyone to do that because I had always been codependent with them, even though I didn't really have the words for it. I'd always felt very, very responsible, very compassionate, so much love for the people around me and my family in particular. Whether they asked me for that or not, whether that was trauma-based or not is not the focus of this particular podcast. But what is true is that when COVID hit, I was forced to start coming back into that world. And in reality, I didn't mind it, okay? I mean, with COVID, I think many of us started to really wonder about our lives of isolation or, wonder about relationships. If we had gotten to really focus on our careers, it started to make us wonder if like maybe there was a side to life that we had been neglecting. And for me in particular, the James Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People talks about this, that there's dependence, independence, and interdependence. And by the time I had come home the last 4 years, it was clear that I was having a hard time going from independence to interdependence, and that I did actually really want it. Okay. So I wanted to be home, and that's what this song was about. It was my hope that coming home and spending time with these relationships would, I would be able to heal family bloodlines. And it wasn't about like, I think many people translate this idea of healing bloodlines into like you having kids that are healed of the traumas of your family, right? But I don't necessarily, because I don't have kids. I've never translated that. It's more of a spiritual place. And I also think there's a lot more about DNA that's true than just passing it on through biological means, right? Like I think there's evidence of there being like a non-local aspects, like when you get into particle physics and you separate two particles and one spins this way and another could be light years away and it spins the other way. Like there's non-local connection, right? I think DNA can be like that with family members. So if one family member is able to break free of some of this programming, some of this trauma, maybe even intergenerational curses, maybe even sin patterns that have been passed down, longer than 7 generations, like who knows, right? There's such a huge topic, but one person breaking through can actually work horizontally, go backwards in time and goes forwards in time. I think that it's beyond time, this work that is healing your bloodline. Something I've been focused on for a long time, and coming home felt like an opportunity to do that, because now I was smack dab in the middle of these patterns again. I myself was being pulled back into these patterns again. And what was interesting is that when I was out, I spent so much time away that I felt free of a lot of that, right? But then it was interesting to see myself back with these people, and just, it was like I was controlled again. These programs came right back so deep, and I was right back into certain patterns. But then on top of that, I also was forced to recognize that even when I had been out in the world, I had been attracting people and scenarios. This energy was still there, right? I was still recreating it and setting it up, even with people who were not from my family. So it's time to face this stuff, time to heal it. And that's what this song, Like a Boomerang, is about. And I was very optimistic at the time. And I felt ready for it, right? But I will tell you, it has been very, very challenging. And I don't know if I'm over with it. I don't know where I'm at these days, but I am recognizing that I'm in a place that I have transcended a lot of things. And this last year in particular has been huge. It has been difficult. It has been grueling at times, but I will say that, part of what's, part of it has been, just resting in the Lord and doing the work every day, and facing everything every day, and absolute prayer work, deep, deep, deep prayer work. And at the end of the day, recognizing that there was a level of disobedience going on with me, that I was putting my family as a counterfeit God, that I was sometimes more afraid of my family than I was of God, that I was sometimes worshiping my family or the idea of my family more than what God's will is for my life. And that's hard to face when you're saying you're, a follower of Jesus for a long time. And then you have to face these areas of your life where you've said, yeah, but not this. This is actually more important. Yeah. I'm saying it here and sure here, but don't touch this. I'm going to handle this. Those are some of the areas that I've had to be honest, and my family's been one of them. So that's what this song, Like a Boomerang, is about. And it's been interesting because the symbolism works on a million different levels. I cannot tell you. I wrote the song 4 years ago from one place. Then I did the video. I worked on the production of it, and I was in another place. And then now I did the video, released it a few weeks ago, and I'm in another place from there. And the symbolism is so rich and so deep. So it's hard for me to even, that to me is a good song. There's a depth here, and I don't want to say too much where I'm coming from with it. I more want to encourage you to check out the video and the song for yourself and see that if it can bring a level of clarity to the situation that you're in. But I will say that being with your family and doing this work can bring a level of humility, and I'm very thankful for that. So the production itself, as I mentioned last week, is Latin jazz, which is not my forte by any means, but I do love it. In fact, I heard a girl play a bossa last week. And if anybody's ever tried to play Latin jazz, if you're not from a Latin country and it's kind of not, once again, not in your DNA, I think it is in their DNA, you have to really work on it, right? In my opinion, you do. I've had to. So, but I'm not even sure why I wanted to do Latin for this one. It just kind of the way it came out. It was just clear as one of those choices I didn't question. And it might be because the area that I'm from is very Latin influence, even though my family is not Latin. We're actually French. Hence why I have trouble with the rhythm on Latin jazz. But the area that I'm from is very Latin influence. And especially when I travel other places, I took it for granted growing up here. But when you travel other places and you come back, you recognize that, how close we really are to Mexico. And there's been a large influence in my life, of the Latin culture, which I'm thankful for. And so maybe that's why. And I used an E piano for the main sound. And let's see, what do I really want to say about the production? I don't want to say much more about the production. It's something that, it had some interesting bass. I will say that. I really love what I did with the bass line, and I like how it goes into the bridge. Doon, 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 doon. And that wasn't something I heard originally in the song when I wrote it. It was something that came out with playing with the production, which I talked a lot last week about how much I enjoy producing, self-producing, the joy of self-producing and the ideas that come out from that. So, and then I also really like the bridge. And if you're not familiar what bridges are, apparently bridges is becoming less of a common thing to be in songs, especially if you're doing contemporary Christian. I'm noticing there's less and less bridges. In certain pop songs, there's less and less bridges. I was having a discussion with an incredible musician about that. I'll talk more about him later today, but he, when he pointed that out, I thought about it, but the bridge is really, I love a bridge in a song because it's like you've got the verses that are sort of repeating. They're giving a story, or they're telling you what the song is about, but they're giving you a variety of it. And then you get to the chorus, and that's your hook, right? That's repeated 2 or 3 times, 4 times in the song. And that's really the message of the song. But the bridge is a place where you can transcend. In reality, you can step out of the music, right? And even though I love pop, and even though I grew up on pop, I always did love it when a song would sort of change for a little while and then go back into itself, right? And the bridge is that opportunity, musically speaking, to step out a little bit and do something different, but how it matches to the rest of the song is interesting and fun creatively. And then the same thing with the lyrics. Like, you want to continue to reiterate your point with the bridge, but you're either transcending it, or sometimes you're giving the opposite perspective of it. You can do so many things with a bridge, and this one in particular I really like because the song itself, just to give you an idea, the verses are like a boomerang, I'm home again, my trajectory was always going to be a return to this. And I'm talking about, even though it was absolutely a surprise to be returned home the way I was, in another sense it felt like destiny, like I was meant to return home at this time, and that it was always going to happen that way. And I love that feeling. But it was also like, I was also a totally different person, right? That's what the first verse is about. Like, I'm also returning home, having lived so long in a different world where nobody even reacted to me in many of the ways that my family did, that it felt like I was coming home as a different person. I'm sure many of us can relate to that. And then, the chorus is, I'll redeem my line, I'll redeem my kind, and boomerang back to life. So I think that's a very, very powerful line. And oftentimes for me, when I write a chorus, it is a bit of an affirmation or a mantra, right? A lot of times I've spoken about this, the power of coupling, where you're wanting to focus your mind with music as an ability to help you get there. So I was really hoping to redeem my line and redeem my kind and boomerang back to life, meaning like I would return to what I was previously doing, which I never had actually planned to leave other than COVID and kind of, the interruption we all experienced at that point. So I wanted to boomerang back to life. Second verse is boomerang, I'm home again. And I don't want to share all the pain and all the pain and blame. I changed that. How we got it so wrong, caring more about fitting in the world than loving well. We were caught and bound, trapped by the world. So this is a common thing in a lot of my music, was just trying to explore when I was coming aware and awake at that time at how often I had been chasing things in the world that I just no longer valued, and recognizing that, in many of my closest and most personal relationships, we weren't wise enough to see through some of that stuff, and it absolutely affected us. So I was going to redeem my line and redeem my kind and boomerang back to life. And then I get to the bridge, and I love this bridge. We can love each other as best we can. We can make room for love to grow. We can heal the years of hidden love. And hidden love is a really powerful statement to me, because I've spent a lot of my life recognizing that, especially men in my life, were unable to really express to me how they felt, but I absolutely felt like they did love me. I felt the love was there. It just wasn't expressed. So I love this line. We can heal the years of hidden love. And how often do we hide our love from each other because we're afraid, right? And then I said, we can heal our family line. So I love this bridge. Now, I will say that 4 years later, after writing this bridge, things did not turn out exactly the way I thought with that. I feel so much more optimistic when I wrote that. But this goes back to my original message that I've been talking about in this show, and the idea of being obedient, and that it's not about our agenda. It's not oftentimes when we put our prayer and our attention out there, we have to have the humility to allow it to unfold the way it's going to unfold. And in that way, it will be even better and we will be surprised. So I'm still in the midst of all of this. I don't yet know. Sorry, this keeps happening. I don't yet know how all of this is going to turn out. But I'm still in the midst of it, and this song is going to comfort and continue. When I did the video, what came up and the reason why I really wanted to do it is because we've been experiencing so much flooding and so many freak storms that I've mentioned. So I featured some of that. I really felt called to get out and immediately film some of the absolute flooding in some of these areas that I trampled and ran across and explored as a little girl. And in particular, there was a tree that came down. Oh my God, that I just absolutely love that tree. Loved it. Oh, God, I could cry thinking about it. Actually, I haven't mentioned before, I'm a tree person, and I spend a lot of time with trees and really, truly love them and think they provide more for us than we recognize at present time. And this particular tree was absolutely healthy, I promise you. And I always stared at it. It was kind of one of those things you take for granted. I stared at it in this nature spot that I went to often, but I took it for granted. It never thought in a